It all started on a chilly winter evening inside a packed basketball arena. The crowd was buzzing with excitement because two of the most talked-about players were about to face off against each other. On one side, there was Caitlin Clark, a sharpshooter known for her incredible three-pointers and calm demeanor under pressure. On the other side stood DiJonai Carrington, a powerhouse who played with raw energy and never backed down from anyone. Both women had earned their reputations as fierce competitors, but no one could have predicted what would happen that night. The game began like any other, fast-paced and intense. Fans cheered as both teams fought hard for every point. Caitlin was having a great start, sinking shot after shot and making it look effortless. But then came DiJonai. She wasn't just playing defense, she was relentless, almost like a storm sweeping across the court. Every time Caitlin got the ball, DiJonai was right there pushing her limits. At first, people thought it was just part of the game. After all, basketball is a physical sport, and everyone expects some level of aggression. But soon, things took a turn. In the second quarter, something happened that made everyone gasp. Caitlin drove toward the basket trying to score, when suddenly DiJonai lunged at her with full force. It wasn't your typical block. It felt more personal, more intentional. Caitlin stumbled, clutching her arm, and fell to the floor. The referee blew the whistle, signaling a foul, but the damage was done. Caitlin stayed down for a few moments, visibly shaken. Her teammates rushed over to check on her, and the crowd went silent. DiJonai didn't say anything. She just stood there staring at Caitlin with an unreadable expression. Some fans booed, others shouted in anger, and a few even clapped, thinking DiJonai had simply been doing her job. But deep down, everyone knew this wasn't just another play. Something about the way it unfolded felt off. Was it passion, or was it something else? After the game, which ended in a narrow loss for Caitlin's team, the incident became the talk of the town. Social media exploded with opinions. Clips of the play went viral, and hashtags like #TryDirtyPlay and Just Competition trended for days. People couldn't stop debating whether DiJonai had crossed the line or if Caitlin was exaggerating the impact. Amidst all the noise, one voice stood out: Jason Whitlock. Jason Whitlock was no stranger to controversy. As a well-known sports commentator, he had built his career by calling out hypocrisy and holding athletes accountable. When he heard about the incident, he wasted no time jumping into the conversation. In his podcast, he dissected every detail of the play, analyzing not just the move itself but also the bigger picture. What we saw tonight wasn't just basketball, he said, leaning forward in his chair. That was targeted aggression, and guess what? Nobody's saying anything about it. His words struck a chord with listeners. Jason wasn't just talking about the game. He was pointing out a pattern. He argued that players like DiJonai often got away with overly aggressive behavior without facing real consequences. This isn't about hating her, he clarified. It's about fairness. If you're going to play dirty, you need to own up to it. Otherwise, what message are we sending to young athletes watching these games? As the days passed, the debate only grew louder. Coaches weighed in, former players shared their thoughts, and fans continued to argue online. Caitlin kept quiet during all of this, focusing on recovering from her injury and preparing for future games. Meanwhile, DiJonai brushed off the criticism, insisting she was just playing her usual style. "I'm not here to make friends," she told reporters. "I'm here to win." But behind closed doors, tensions simmered. Friends of Caitlin whispered about how unfair it was that nothing seemed to change after such a blatant hit. Supporters of DiJonai defended her, saying she was being judged too harshly because of her intensity. And through it all, Jason Whitlock kept the spotlight firmly on the issue, reminding everyone that accountability mattered, even in sports. By the end of the week, the story had taken on a life of its own. What started as a single moment on the court had become a national conversation about ethics, fairness, and the fine line between competition and cruelty. For Caitlin, it was a test of resilience. For DiJonai, it was a chance to prove herself. And for Jason Whitlock, it was another opportunity to challenge the status quo. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. The real battle hadn't even started yet. The controversy didn't die down after that game. It only grew bigger. Social media was flooded with opinions, arguments, and heated debates. People were divided into two camps, those who thought DiJonai's actions were completely justified, and others who believed she had gone too far. The video clip of the play kept circulating online, replayed over and over again. Each time someone watched it, they seemed to find a new detail to argue about. Was her lunge intentional? Did Caitlin exaggerate the fall? Or was this just another example of how competitive sports sometimes get out of hand? Jason Whitlock wasn't done yet either. He saw the chaos unfolding and decided to dive deeper. In his next podcast episode, he brought up old footage of similar incidents in basketball history. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened," he said, leaning back in his chair as if he were having a casual conversation with listeners. "But what makes this case different is how we're choosing to handle it, or rather not handle it." He pointed out that DiJonai hadn't faced any real consequences for her actions. No suspension, no fine, nothing. Her team didn't even issue an apology. To Jason, this was a glaring example of double standards in sports. If this had happened in the NBA or NFL, he argued, you can bet there would have been some kind of fallout. But here? Silence. Crickets. His words struck a nerve, and soon his podcast episode was being shared across platforms, fueling even more discussion. Meanwhile, Caitlin stayed quiet. She avoided interviews and kept her focus on recovery. Friends close to her said she was frustrated but determined not to let the incident define her career. They described her as someone who always preferred action over words. Instead of complaining, Caitlin poured her energy into training harder than ever. Every morning she showed up at the gym before anyone else, working tirelessly to regain her strength and confidence. Her teammates noticed the change in her demeanor. She wasn't just practicing to get better. She was preparing to prove herself, all over again. On the other side, DiJonai found herself under intense scrutiny. Some fans rallied behind her, praising her aggressive style as proof that women could compete just as fiercely as men. "She's playing hard because she wants to win," one supporter tweeted. "Why are we punishing her for that?" Others weren't so forgiving. Critics accused her of using intimidation tactics to gain an edge, calling her behavior reckless and unnecessary. Even former players weighed in, with some defending her and others criticizing her lack of restraint. DiJonai tried to brush off the negativity, but it wasn't easy. Behind the scenes, she struggled with the backlash. Close friends revealed that she often stayed up late scrolling through comments online, reading both praise and criticism. Sometimes, she laughed off the mean-spirited remarks, joking about how people loved to make mountains out of molehills. Other times, though, she couldn't help but feel hurt. "I'm not a bad person," she confided in a teammate during practice one day. "I just want to play my game my way." Her coach noticed the toll it was taking on her and pulled her aside for a heart-to-heart talk. "Listen," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You know I support you, right? But you also need to understand that when you play like this, it comes with responsibility. People are watching everything you do, not just on the court but off it too." DiJonai nodded silently, absorbing his words. She knew he was right, but changing her approach felt like losing a part of herself. As the days turned into weeks, the debate spilled beyond sports circles. Talk shows picked up the story, inviting experts to weigh in. One guest, a retired college coach, shared a perspective that resonated with many viewers. "Basketball is a contact sport," she explained. "There's bound to be physicality, and emotions run high. But there's a difference between being tough and crossing the line. Where exactly do we draw that line?" Her question sparked even more discussion. Parents of young athletes chimed in, sharing concerns about what message this incident sent to kids. Should they encourage their children to be aggressive to succeed, or should they prioritize fairness and respect? Teachers used the situation as a lesson in ethics classes, asking students to debate whether winning justified questionable behavior. It seemed like everyone had an opinion, and no one could agree. Amidst all the noise, Jason Whitlock remained at the center of it all. He continued to analyze every twist and turn, offering sharp commentary that challenged conventional thinking. In one segment, he addressed the racial undertones that some people hinted at, but few dared to discuss openly. "Let's be honest," he said, his tone serious. "If she looked different, would we still be having this conversation? Would we still be calling her dirty or questioning her integrity?" His question hung in the air, leaving listeners to ponder its implications. Despite the mounting pressure, neither Caitlin nor DiJonai backed away from the spotlight. Both were set to face each other again in an upcoming game, and the anticipation was electric. Fans couldn't wait to see how things would unfold this time. Would Caitlin rise above the controversy and dominate the court? Or would DiJonai stick to her aggressive style, proving once and for all that she wasn't afraid to take risks? Behind the scenes, however, both players carried the weight of expectations. Caitlin knew she had to perform well, not just for herself, but to show that she wasn't shaken by what had happened. For DiJonai, the stakes were equally high. She wanted to silence her critics and demonstrate that she could play hard without losing control. Neither woman spoke publicly about their feelings, but those closest to them could sense the tension building. As the rematch approached, the atmosphere shifted. What started as a single moment of conflict had evolved into something much larger, a battle of ideologies, values, and perceptions. Basketball fans around the world eagerly awaited the showdown, knowing that whatever happened next would leave a lasting mark on the sport. And through it all, Jason Whitlock watched closely, ready to comment on every move, every decision, and every consequence, or lack thereof. Silence can speak louder than words, and that's exactly what happened in the weeks following the controversy. The basketball world waited for some kind of resolution, some official statement, penalty, or acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but nothing came. DiJonai didn't face any suspension, fine, or even a slap on the wrist from league officials. To many, this felt like a glaring oversight. Jason Whitlock seized the moment to call out the lack of accountability in his usual bold style. But this time, his words carried an extra layer of frustration. "Nothing happened," he said during one of his podcast episodes, his voice rising with each word. "Absolutely nothing. She did what she did, and here we are weeks later acting like it never occurred. Is that fair? Is that justice?" His rant resonated with listeners who had been waiting for someone to say exactly that. Whitlock wasn't just talking about DiJonai anymore. He was pointing fingers at the system itself, accusing it of turning a blind eye when things got messy. If you let players get away with stuff like this, you're sending a message. It's okay to push boundaries because no one's going to hold you accountable. His comments reignited the debate, bringing fresh waves of opinions from fans, analysts, and even former players. Some agreed with him, saying the league needed stricter rules to handle aggressive behavior. Others argued that punishing every hard foul would ruin the spirit of competition. Amidst all the noise, Caitlin stayed silent. She didn't give interviews, post on social media, or address the situation publicly. Instead, she focused on her recovery and training, letting her actions do the talking. But silence doesn't always mean weakness. Those close to Caitlin noticed a shift in her mindset. She wasn't bitter or angry. She was determined. Every day she showed up to practice earlier than anyone else, pushing herself harder than ever before. Her teammates saw how much effort she put into improving her game, and they couldn't help but admire her resilience. One teammate described her as a quiet storm. On the outside, she seemed calm and composed, but inside she burned with purpose. She wanted to prove that no incident, not even one as dramatic as this, could break her spirit. DiJonai, on the other hand, faced a different kind of challenge. While Caitlin chose silence, DiJonai found herself at the center of relentless scrutiny. Everywhere she went, people whispered about her. At games, fans held up signs criticizing her play style. Online, comment sections were filled with insults calling her names she didn't deserve. Even neutral observers started questioning whether her aggression was truly justified or if it crossed a line. For someone used to playing with fire, this level of attention was overwhelming. Her friends noticed how much it affected her. Late at night, after long days of practice, DiJonai would scroll through her phone, reading tweets and Instagram comments about her. Sometimes she laughed off the ridiculous accusations, joking with her roommate about how creative haters could be. Other times, though, she couldn't hide her frustration. "Why does everyone think I'm some villain?" she asked during one particularly tough evening. "I'm just trying to win. Isn't that what everyone wants us to do?" Her coach tried to guide her through the storm, offering advice that went beyond basketball. "You have to decide what kind of player and person you want to be," he told her during a private meeting. "People will always judge you based on your actions, not your intentions. So ask yourself, are you okay with being seen as aggressive? Or do you want to show them another side of you?" His words hit home, making DiJonai reflect on her approach to the game. She realized that while she loved the intensity of basketball, she didn't want to be remembered as someone who played dirty or caused harm. Slowly, DiJonai began making changes. She started working with a mentor, a retired player known for balancing toughness with sportsmanship. Together, they analyzed footage of her games, identifying moments where she could have toned down her aggression without sacrificing effectiveness. "It's not about losing your edge," the mentor explained. "It's about using it wisely. You can still dominate the court without making enemies." DiJonai soaked up every piece of advice, determined to grow not just as a player but as a person. While both athletes worked behind the scenes, Jason Whitlock kept the conversation alive. He published articles dissecting the lack of consequences for DiJonai, arguing that it set a dangerous precedent. "What happens when players realize they can get away with anything?" he wrote. "They stop respecting the rules. They stop respecting their opponents, and eventually they stop respecting themselves." His pieces sparked heated debates, with readers either praising his honesty or accusing him of blowing things out of proportion. Despite the ongoing drama, something subtle began to shift in the basketball community. People started looking beyond the surface-level arguments and focusing on larger questions. Was this really about one player versus another? Or was it about deeper issues within the sport? Coaches began emphasizing sportsmanship in their training sessions, reminding young players that winning shouldn't come at the cost of integrity. Parents talked to their kids about finding balance between competitiveness and kindness. Even casual fans found themselves thinking twice about how they cheered for or criticized their favorite teams. As the weeks passed, the initial outrage began to fade, replaced by quieter reflections. Caitlin continued to train, her confidence growing stronger with each passing day. DiJonai worked tirelessly to refine her game, determined to earn back respect without compromising her passion. And Jason Whitlock watched it all unfold, knowing that this story was far from over. The rematch loomed on the horizon, promising to bring everything full circle. Would Caitlin rise above the controversy and reclaim her dominance? Could DiJonai rewrite her narrative and prove that she was more than the sum of her mistakes? Or would the game reveal something entirely unexpected? For now, the answers remained hidden, tucked away in the hearts and minds of the two athletes preparing to face each other once again. Months had passed since the incident that sparked so much debate, and both athletes were quietly working on themselves in ways no one could see from the outside. The world might have moved on from the headlines, but Caitlin and DiJonai were still carrying the weight of what happened, each in their own way. For Caitlin, the focus was clear. She wanted to rise above the controversy and let her game speak for itself. For DiJonai, it was about proving that she wasn't the villain people made her out to be. Their journeys weren't just about basketball anymore. They were about personal growth, resilience, and finding redemption where it mattered most. Caitlin's transformation began on the court, but it went far beyond shooting hoops or perfecting her footwork. She started seeing a sports psychologist who helped her process everything she'd been through. At first, Caitlin was hesitant. Talking about emotions wasn't something she was used to. It felt too vulnerable, too raw. But after a few sessions, she realized how much she needed this space to unpack her feelings. "It's not just about bouncing back physically," her therapist explained during one session. "You've got to heal mentally too. That's where real strength comes from." With time, Caitlin began opening up, not just to her therapist but also to her teammates. She shared how frustrated she had felt after the incident, How unfair it seemed that nothing had changed despite all the noise. But instead of letting bitterness take root, she chose to channel those emotions into something positive. She became an advocate for sportsmanship, speaking to younger players about the importance of respect and fair play. Her message was simple, yet powerful. Winning is great, but how you win matters even more. Off the court, Caitlin found solace in small things: long walks in the park, journaling late at night, and spending time with her family. These moments grounded her, reminding her why she fell in love with basketball in the first place. It wasn't about fame or rivalry. It was about the joy of playing, the thrill of competition, and the camaraderie of being part of a team. Slowly but surely, Caitlin rediscovered her passion, and it showed in her performance. Her shots were sharper, her passes crisper, and her leadership stronger than ever before. Meanwhile, DiJonai was undergoing her own journey of self-reflection. Working with her mentor had opened her eyes to new possibilities. She learned that aggression didn't have to mean recklessness, that there was a way to play fiercely without losing control. Practice sessions became laboratories where she experimented with different approaches. Instead of lunging recklessly at opponents, she focused on timing her moves better, using precision instead of brute force. Her coach noticed the difference immediately. "She's still intense," he told his assistants, "but now she's calculated. She's thinking before she acts." Beyond the technical adjustments, DiJonai worked on shifting her mindset. She started journaling too, writing down her thoughts after every practice and game. Some entries were filled with frustration about how hard it was to change habits she'd developed over years. Others were hopeful, celebrating small victories, like resisting the urge to retaliate when provoked or earning a nod of approval from her mentor. Over time, these reflections helped her gain clarity. She realized that while she couldn't erase the past, she could shape her future by choosing to grow. DiJonai also reached out to former players who had faced similar controversies during their careers. One retired athlete in particular left a lasting impression on her. "The court doesn't define you," he told her during a phone call. "What defines you is how you handle adversity. Use this moment to show people who you really are." His words stuck with her, becoming a mantra she repeated to herself whenever doubt crept in. As both athletes prepared for the rematch, whispers spread among fans and analysts alike. Would this game finally put the controversy to rest? Or would it reignite old tensions? Jason Whitlock kept a close eye on developments, occasionally dropping hints in his podcasts about what he expected to see. "This isn't just another matchup," he said during one episode. "This is a test for both of them. Can she prove she's not reckless? Can she show she's stronger than ever?" The anticipation built steadily as the day of the game approached. Tickets sold out within hours, and social media buzzed with predictions and opinions. Fans debated endlessly. Who would come out on top? Would Caitlin dominate with grace and poise? Or would DiJonai silence her critics with skillful plays and newfound restraint? Everyone had a theory, but no one truly knew what to expect. Behind the scenes, Caitlin and DiJonai were preparing not just physically but mentally. Caitlin visualized the game over and over in her mind, imagining scenarios where she stayed calm and composed regardless of what happened. She reminded herself that she couldn't control DiJonai's actions, but she could control her response. Meanwhile, DiJonai rehearsed her strategies, focusing on staying disciplined under pressure. She wanted to show everyone, including herself, that she had grown. On the morning of the game, both players woke up early, each following their own pre-game rituals. Caitlin meditated, clearing her mind of distractions. DiJonai listened to music, letting the rhythm steady her nerves. Neither spoke publicly about how they felt, but those close to them could sense the mix of excitement and anxiety. This wasn't just another game. It was a chance to rewrite their stories. As they stepped onto the court later that evening, the arena was electric. Fans cheered loudly, holding up signs and chanting slogans. Reporters lined the sidelines, cameras ready to capture every moment. The air crackled with tension, anticipation, and hope. Both players took their positions, exchanging a brief glance before the tip-off. There was no animosity in their eyes, just determination. When the whistle blew, the game began, and for the first time in months, the focus shifted away from controversy and back to basketball. Every pass, every shot, every defensive move carried meaning. Caitlin played with confidence, her movements fluid and precise. DiJonai matched her intensity, showcasing her refined skills without crossing the line. The crowd roared with every basket, caught up in the drama unfolding before them. By halftime, it was clear that something special was happening. This wasn't just a battle between two talented players. It was a display of resilience, growth, and mutual respect. Even Jason Whitlock couldn't help but acknowledge the shift. "I didn't think I'd say this," he admitted during a live broadcast. "But maybe we're witnessing something bigger than either of them. Maybe this is about healing, not just for them, but for the sport itself." As the final quarter approached, the energy in the arena reached its peak. Fans held their breath, unsure of what the outcome would be. But deep down, they knew one thing for certain. Win or lose, Caitlin and DiJonai had already proven something important. They had shown that mistakes don't define you. What you do next does. And when the final buzzer sounded, the applause wasn't just for the scoreboard. It was for the journey, the lessons, and the promise of a brighter future. The rematch was everything fans had hoped for, and more. The arena buzzed with energy as both teams took the court, but all eyes were on Caitlin and DiJonai. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was a moment that carried weight far beyond points on the scoreboard. For Caitlin, it was a chance to prove she had moved past the controversy and come back stronger than ever. For DiJonai, it was an opportunity to show the world she wasn't the reckless player people thought she was. Both athletes knew this game mattered, not just for their careers, but for how they would be remembered. From the opening tip-off, it was clear that something was different this time. Caitlin played with a calm confidence that hadn't been there before. Her movements were smooth, her passes precise, and her shots almost effortless. She didn't rush or force anything. Instead, she let the game come to her. When DiJonai guarded, Caitlin didn't shy away. She held her ground, meeting every challenge head-on without letting frustration take over. It was as if she had transformed into a new version of herself, someone who could handle pressure without losing her cool. DiJonai too brought her A-game, but in a way that surprised many. Gone were the reckless lunges and overly aggressive plays that had sparked so much debate. Instead, she focused on timing and strategy, using her strength wisely rather than recklessly. Every move she made seemed calculated, designed not just to stop Caitlin but to elevate her own team's performance. Fans noticed the change immediately. "She's playing smarter," one spectator remarked during a timeout. "You can tell. She's put in the work." As the game progressed, the tension between them remained, but it felt different now. There was still intensity, still a fierce desire to win, but it lacked the bitterness that had overshadowed their previous encounter. Instead of hostility, there was a sense of mutual respect growing between them. After one particularly tough play where DiJonai blocked Caitlin cleanly, she extended a hand to help her up. Caitlin hesitated for a split second before accepting it, nodding briefly in acknowledgement. The crowd erupted in cheers, not because of the score but because of the gesture. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes about how far both players had come. Jason Whitlock watched the game closely, scribbling notes during breaks. Even he couldn't deny the shift in dynamics. During halftime, he turned to his co-host and said, "This isn't what I expected. They're not just competing, they're elevating each other." His words echoed what many viewers were feeling. Something special was happening on that court, and it wasn't just about basketball. It was about redemption, growth, and proving that people can change when given the chance. By the fourth quarter, the game was neck and neck. Both teams fought hard, refusing to give an inch. Caitlin sank a clutch three-pointer with less than 2 minutes left, sending her teammates into a frenzy. On the next possession, DiJonai responded with a powerful drive to the basket, tying the score once again. The crowd roared, torn between admiration for both players Neither side backed down, and neither athlete showed signs of fatigue despite the grueling pace. With only seconds remaining, the ball ended up in Caitlin's hands. Her team trailed by 1 point, and everyone in the arena knew she was going to take the shot. DiJonai stepped up to defend, mirroring Caitlin's movements like a shadow. As Caitlin dribbled to create space, time seemed to slow down. The entire arena fell silent, holding its breath. Then, with perfect form, Caitlin launched the ball toward the hoop. It felt like an eternity before the ball swished through the net. The buzzer sounded and the crowd exploded in cheers. Caitlin's teammates rushed to hug her, celebrating the incredible last-second victory. But what happened next caught everyone off guard, including Caitlin herself. DiJonai walked over, clapping slowly at first, then breaking into a genuine smile. "Good shot," she said loud enough for nearby reporters to hear. Caitlin looked at her, slightly stunned, before returning the smile. "Thanks," she replied softly. That brief exchange said more than any post-game interview ever could. In that moment, both athletes acknowledged each other's skill and effort. They weren't rivals anymore, at least not in the toxic sense the media had portrayed them. They were simply two competitors who respected each other's journey. After the game, reporters swarmed both players, eager to get their reactions. Caitlin spoke first, her voice steady and composed. "It feels good to win," she admitted. "But honestly, I'm just glad we got to play the way we did tonight. Basketball is supposed to bring people together, not tear them apart." Her words resonated deeply, earning applause from the press room. When it was DiJonai's turn, she didn't shy away from addressing the elephant in the room. "I know a lot of people doubted me after everything that happened," she began, pausing to collect her thoughts. "But I used those doubts to push myself harder. Tonight wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about showing that I can grow and adapt. And honestly, I think we both proved something important today." Her honesty struck a chord with listeners. Social media lit up with praise for both players, with fans calling the game a masterclass in sportsmanship. Even Jason Whitlock, who had been critical of DiJonai in the past, gave credit where it was due. "Sometimes you have to eat your words," he wrote in a follow-up article. "What we saw tonight wasn't just basketball. It was proof that accountability and growth lead to greatness." In the days that followed, the conversation shifted yet again. Analysts praised Caitlin for her resilience and grace under pressure. Coaches highlighted DiJonai's improved discipline and maturity. Parents shared clips of the game with their kids, pointing out moments where both players demonstrated respect and determination. The rematch had become more than just a sporting event. It was a lesson in perseverance, forgiveness, and the power of second chances. For Caitlin, the win solidified her status as one of the brightest stars in the league. She continued advocating for sportsmanship, using her platform to inspire young athletes. Her quiet leadership earned her even more admirers, both on and off the court. Meanwhile, DiJonai embraced her role as someone who had overcome adversity. She started mentoring younger players, sharing lessons she'd learned about balancing passion with responsibility. Her transformation inspired countless fans who had once doubted her. As the season rolled on, both athletes continued to shine, each carrying the lessons of that fateful rematch with them. They faced each other again later in the year, and though the stakes were high, the atmosphere was lighter. Their rivalry had evolved into something healthier, something rooted in mutual respect rather than animosity. Looking back, the rematch wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about healing wounds, rewriting narratives, and showing the world that people can rise above their mistakes. Caitlin and DiJonai proved that true greatness isn't measured by trophies or stats. It's measured by character, growth, and the ability to inspire others. And somewhere in the stands, Jason Whitlock smiled. For once, the story had ended exactly the way he hoped it would, with redemption, respect, and a reminder of why we love sports in the first place. The rematch wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the beginning of something bigger. Both Caitlin and DiJonai walked away from that game knowing they had accomplished more than just scoring points or making plays. They had shown the world what true sportsmanship looked like, even after all the noise and controversy. But the story didn't stop there. What happened next shaped not only their careers, but also how people viewed competition, accountability, and growth. Caitlin's life changed in ways she hadn't expected. Her performance during the rematch earned her a spot on national television, where she spoke openly about overcoming adversity and staying focused despite challenges. She wasn't just seen as a talented player anymore. She was seen as a leader, someone who could inspire others to rise above negativity. Young fans started writing letters to her, sharing stories about how her journey had encouraged them to keep going when things got tough. One letter stood out to her. A kid who said he used to quit whenever things got hard, but now wanted to. Be brave like Caitlin. Her advocacy for sportsmanship grew stronger too. She partnered with youth basketball programs, teaching kids not just how to play, but how to respect the game and each other. At one clinic, she gathered the children in a circle and asked them, "What does winning mean to you?" The answers varied, from scoring goals to beating opponents, but Caitlin smiled and added her own perspective. Winning isn't just about the scoreboard, she told them. It's about becoming a better version of yourself every day. Those words stuck with the kids long after the clinic ended. Meanwhile, DiJonai continued to rebuild her reputation, brick by brick. After the rematch, she received messages from fans thanking her for showing humility and growth. Some admitted they had judged her harshly before but now saw her in a new light. It wasn't easy letting go of the past, but DiJonai embraced the challenge. She knew trust took time to rebuild, and she was willing to put in the work. One of the biggest turning points came when she decided to mentor young athletes herself. She joined a local community center program aimed at helping kids develop discipline and confidence through sports. During practice sessions, she shared stories from her own career, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. "I made mistakes," she told a group of wide-eyed teenagers one afternoon, "but I learned from them, and so can you." Her honesty resonated with the kids, many of whom looked up to her as proof that second chances were possible. DiJonai also began speaking publicly about mental health, something she had struggled with silently for years. On a podcast hosted by a former athlete, she opened up about the pressure she felt during the controversy and how close she came to doubting herself. "There were nights I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about what everyone was saying about me," she confessed. "But then I realized I couldn't control what others thought. All I could do was focus on getting better, one step at a time." Her vulnerability inspired listeners, especially young players dealing with similar struggles. As both athletes moved forward, their paths occasionally crossed, at award ceremonies, charity events, and even a few more games against each other. Each time they met, the tension that once existed had faded further. They weren't best friends, but they weren't enemies either. Instead, they were two professionals who respected each other's journeys. In interviews, Caitlin often praised DiJonai's transformation, calling her one of the toughest competitors I've ever faced and one of the most improved. DiJonai returned the compliment, acknowledging Caitlin's resilience and leadership. Their mutual respect became a symbol of how rivalries could evolve into something positive. Jason Whitlock watched it all unfold with a mix of pride and reflection. He had been vocal about holding athletes accountable, but he also recognized the importance of giving people room to grow. In one of his final pieces about the rivalry, he wrote, "Sometimes we forget that athletes are human beings too. They make mistakes, yes, but they also have the capacity to learn and change. This story reminds us that redemption is real, if we're willing to embrace it." His words struck a chord with readers, sparking conversations about forgiveness and fairness in sports. Coaches across the country started using Caitlin and DiJonai's story as an example of how to handle conflict and adversity. Parents shared the tale with their kids, emphasizing the value of perseverance and humility. Even schools incorporated it into lesson plans, encouraging students to think critically about how actions and reactions shape legacies. Years later, when Caitlin retired as one of the most celebrated players in basketball history, she reflected on her career during her farewell speech. Standing in front of a packed arena, she thanked her teammates, coaches, and fans, but she saved a special mention for DiJonai. "She pushed me to be better. Caitlin said, smiling warmly. Not just as a player, but as a person. Without her, I wouldn't be standing here today. The crowd erupted in applause, and DiJonai, sitting in the front row, wiped away a tear. For DiJonai, the legacy she left behind was equally impactful. Though her stats may not have matched Caitlin's, her influence extended far beyond the court. She became known as someone who turned criticism into motivation, proving that growth was always possible. When she hung up her jersey, she transitioned into coaching, dedicating her life to helping young athletes navigate the pressures of competition while staying true to themselves. Looking back, the rivalry that once divided fans became a unifying force. It taught people that sports weren't just about winning or losing. They were about learning, growing, and finding common ground. Caitlin and DiJonai showed that even in moments of conflict, there was room for understanding and respect. Their journey reminded everyone that greatness wasn't defined by trophies or titles. It was defined by character, courage, and the ability to inspire others. And so, the story came full circle. What started as a heated debate about aggression and accountability ended as a testament to resilience and redemption. Caitlin and DiJonai weren't just athletes anymore. They were symbols of hope, proof that no matter how messy things got, people could find a way to rise above it all. In the end, the real victory wasn't on the scoreboard. It was in the hearts and minds of everyone who learned something valuable from their journey. As Jason Whitlock put it in his closing remarks about the rivalry, this wasn't just a game. It was life, a reminder that our greatest challenges often lead to our greatest lessons.